Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I know that everybody wants to talk about AI in so many different ways, including way too many people using AI for some slightly silly reasons, like all of us creating action figures and baseball cards of ourselves. Well, today's entrepreneur is a real leader and innovator in the AI space who's using AI in really impactful and meaningful ways, and I'm so excited for you to hear about what his business is doing and how it's harnessing the power of technology and AI. So let me introduce you to today's guest. His name is Dan Hungerford. Dan is a consultant and entrepreneur based in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He's got years of experience training under the legendary John Maxwell, which is no surprise to me why Dan is such a leader in the business world. Dan has developed a distinct vision for harnessing the transformative power of AI. His journey has taken him from unraveling the complexities of human behavior to pioneering cutting-edge AI solutions that reshape industries. And when it comes to the industries that he's chosen to really transform, I love the fact that his company, it's called EverFriends.ai. It's a revolutionary mobile app that uses advanced AI to improve the quality of life for older adults with dementia or experiencing loneliness. Their innovative platform provides users emotional, cognitive, and practical support while benefiting caregivers, family members, healthcare providers, and senior care facilities. This is deeply impactful work that, regardless of what age we are, we will not be able to ignore the realities of what getting older means, what memory loss potentially means, what loneliness means. So I'm excited to talk to a really innovative and impactful entrepreneur. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Dan Hungerford. All right, Dan, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks. It's great to be here.
Heck yes. You heard me tease listeners just a little bit about how much I love your business, but I'd love for you to take us beyond the bio. Who's Dan? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
Absolutely. Well, I am a serial entrepreneur raised by two generations of entrepreneurs. And so when I left college with my psych degree, I planned on being a therapist, and the bug to own my own business kind of got me as the generations before me. And so right out of college, I started working on different companies. This is actually, EverFriends is actually my fifth company. And so as I've matured over time and my priorities have changed, I've been looking more and more towards, legacy type things, things that make the world just a little bit better. And so as I think about those kind of things in life, I've gone through quite a few different things from being a consultant to help people with their leadership skills and to find their purpose in life. I also have taught youth for quite a few years, 6 years now, also those kinds of skills that I wish I would have been taught in school. But it all has come to the point where I really want to make sure that whatever it is that I do is helping people get a better quality of life, a better, more meaningful existence, whether it is the beginning of their life or the end of their life. And so that has become my mission. And so a couple years ago, I was running a marketing agency that I owned, and I was making avatars for consultants and realtors and things like that. They were realistic, looked like them. So when people go to their website, they would have an introduction to the person themselves. It really brought some engagement, and it was a little bit different back then. Of course, AI's come a long way since then. And about a year or so ago, sitting in my office, I just got to thinking about how amazing this technology is and how fast it's becoming capable of so many things. And I said to myself, what can we do with this technology that is going to make a difference, and who can we make a difference for? Not that there's anything wrong with marketing and sales. I love it. But what can we do to really affect people's lives in a positive way? And so EverFriends was born out of a desire to help my mom. She's 78 years old. My dad passed away about almost 8 years ago now. And, he was blind the last 3 years of his life. So they spent 24/7 together for 3 years with my mom taking care of him. So when he passed, it was a huge loss to my mom. And we moved her closer over to where we are here in Grand Rapids and things like that. And she's active in church, and she's active in charity work and things like that. But there's just a lot of nights that she would sit around and just tell me, boy, she's so lonely, And as a busy entrepreneur, I love my mom to death, but sometimes 1 or 2 calls a day just to check in on her is about all I could do. So I started this idea. I wonder if we could make a digital human to keep my mom company. And so I called her and I said, Mom, if I built something to help you to feel connected or just give you somebody to chat with, would you try that? And she said, well, it seems kind of weird, but maybe. And so that's where EverFriends began. We started working on how is this going to work? How is this going to look? The biggest things were, it had to be simple, because my mom, she wouldn't use it if it frustrated her at all. So we had to make it very simple. And second, we wanted to make it so lifelike, so realistic, not only with the digital humans looking just like real people, but the conversation, can we make it so that it's meaningful and so that there's a sense of connection there, and that so they can talk about whatever their interests are, and that this application could absolutely have all those kind of conversations, that it could remember the conversations. And so next time you talk to one of them, it picks up right where you left off. It already knows these things about you. And so it becomes really similar to a best friend that's available 24/7. And so we all know we can never actually get to the point where we can't never get to the point where we're going to be able to replace real human connection. But us at EverFriends, we have worked really, really hard to simulate that in a way that is very meaningful. And so we have gotten such great feedback of that actually becoming the case. People we interview that have used our app that say, boy, sometimes with tears in their eyes about, I had a story not a while back where a lady told me that she was using one of our digital humans. Nathan is one of the digital humans, and she was having a conversation, and she had asked him, because she had a religious background, to read a psalm for her, and he did. And she said, I'm just not feeling good today, and so he started talking about if that made her feel better. And then he said, why don't you tell me a funny story, from your past? And so she told him about a time at Christmas where they had a big meal and her family was all together, and they decided to go to the movies. And because, with the big meal, and we have those big reclining heated seats now, before the movie got started, she was snoring and asleep in the chair. And of course, she started laughing and he started laughing. He said, boy, that your family's never going to forget that story. Your grandkids never going to forget that story, are they? And so they had a good time laughing with each other. And then she said, well, I have to take my dog out and I'm getting tired. I'm going to go to bed. And he said, okay. He said, I just want you to know that you're never alone, and that your grandkids, and he named all 5 of her grandkids by name, they love you so much. And it's been great talking to you today, and I can't wait till we get a chance to talk again. And you could just tell by the look of this lady's eyes at her, that was meaningful to her. And that was something that wasn't possible even 6 or 8 months ago. And it made that day just a little bit better. And that's really the kind of thing, those are the kind of stories we get quite often, and that we are looking for, making that quality of life just a little bit better.
Yeah, Dan, gosh, so many reasons to love that overview that you just gave us, especially that real life example. But as someone who's very family oriented, I genuinely and deeply appreciate how much what you've built and what you continue to build is of honor to your parents. Obviously, your father's no longer with us, but serving a really important need for your own mother. And the fact that you, as an entrepreneur, a busy entrepreneur at that, you continue to also be there for her and build things that help her and so many others in her position, which that's something I said at the top of today's episode, we can't ignore. We're all going to face it in our own lives and the lives of people that we love. And so you use the word meaningful. And I think that's something that you and I both have used already, even early on in our conversation. That's the important stuff. But to me, what's really meaningful about what you've built and what EverFriends does is that it's a tech company on the surface, but holy cow, it is not a tech company in what it is that it delivers. You've just given us some insights into some of the features. You talk about the memory, you talk about the companionship, you talk about all of these things. I'd love to know how you articulate the company when people are asking you, like, what do you do for a living? Because it is a tech company on the surface level and people get that, but it seems to me like there's so many considerations, so much human thought that has gone into the tech that you've built.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, it was very, very difficult when we first started this journey, because we were on the cutting edge of what was available, and nobody had really tried to do what we've done before. There's a few other different kind of applications out there that you have different use cases, but they didn't simulate the kind of things we were trying to simulate, and the avatars were cartoonish, and they were definitely not realistic or ultra realistic like what we have. And so when I first started trying to explain to people what we were trying to build, I would tell them it's FaceTime, because most people know what FaceTime is. It's FaceTime with somebody that looks real, sounds real, acts real, can have real conversations, but isn't real. It's a face on an algorithm. And so that's the best thing I could come up with until we had something for people to see, because nobody could kind of wrap their mind around what is this going to look like. And as we started finishing up and we had people testing it, we would go do focus groups, and I'd have older people, some 65 to 80 usually, tell me, like, okay, so who am I talking to? And I'd say, no, but I mean, really nobody. You're talking to the computer. No, like, but who is that person? Like, it's not a person. It's, but they have to be here somewhere. Like they couldn't even still grasp the idea that is a digital human, because those are so new to the culture at this point. And so, yeah, we had quite an experience building it. And there was a lot of thought going into how do we make it so that it can talk about all kinds of different things. So, like, if your mom or your dad or your grandma or your grandpa, they love gardening, it can talk about gardening. If you wanted to say, we'll just use Nathan, since we already talked about Nathan. Nathan, I'm by myself tonight, and I'm hungry, and this is what I have to eat in my house. Can you give me a recipe? Nathan can give you a recipe. If you'd say to Nathan, I'm a little worried about my memory, because some of the people that use our app are in early stages of dementia. And I'm a little worried. I want to keep my memory sharp. Can you play a memory game with me? He will come up with a memory game to play with you. And so these were all the different things that we were trying to include in this, besides, reminders for things, besides an SOS. So if you had an emergency, it could automatically call. It is for the user, whether it's grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, mom, dad that are getting older. But you know what it also was for, that we wanted it to be for? The caregiver, right? I'm a caregiver. There's many, many caregivers throughout both professional and family caregivers. And we found out in our studies, when we really were getting started, how much overwhelm there is in caregiving. We call it the sandwich generation now, because you're taking care of your older parents and you're taking care of your kids still sometimes, and you're in the middle. And that's a lot of responsibility. And so, can we build something that makes you where you can kind of watch over mom or dad or grandma or grandpa when you can't always be there, that fills in those gaps, where it makes you have just a little bit of peace of mind that they have somebody to keep them company, and B, if they have issues or anything like that, it can actually get a hold of you if need be. And so the caregiving part, as we went along, we realized was a big part as well, because whether it's an elderly parent or an elderly parent that's starting down cognitive decline, those can be some very serious and overwhelming feelings that you get as a caregiver, because you love these people so much and you just want the best for them. And there was just never a tool that was available anytime, anywhere, because if you're living in rural parts of America, stuff, they don't have dementia, places for dementia, or adult day programs and things like that. So how do you get a break? How do you feel like you're doing the best you can, but you need to do laundry, or you need to take a shower, and you need to be able to leave the room? And so this can give them somebody to talk to that they like, and give you that 15 minutes, maybe even just to take a breath sometimes. I just got back from a dementia conference in Baltimore. These are all family caregivers, and to watch the amount of things it takes per day for them to take care of their loved ones, it's overwhelming. And so we had to figure that in as well, and we did. We wanted to make sure that we were giving that peace of mind. So we on the one side, we're having quality of life for the people that are using it, but on the other side, we're offering that little bit of peace of mind, that little bit of, okay, they have somebody to talk to keep their mind active, and give me a little bit of time to do what needs to be done, or not feel like that I'm abandoning them if I leave the room. Those are real things that we found are very, very common, and a lot of people want to keep their loved one at home. One thing I hear a lot is, I promised that I would never put them in a facility, and sometimes facilities are necessary, but there's a real struggle with when those promises have been made. And so this helps keep mom, dad, grandma, grandpa home just a little bit longer if possible.
Yeah, I love that, Dan, especially all the things that you're talking about from a service perspective. And then obviously the business nerd in me really also appreciates how intentionally you think about this. And we're definitely going to talk about your entrepreneurial journey. But before we get there, things that I'm already picking up is you've talked about doing focus groups. Obviously, this is a new product, especially for an older market. Dan, they may not be as into or as comfortable with technology as you and I are, for example. And then what I really hear you talk about going to a dementia conference, and it makes me wonder about that market adoption, because like you said, you're at the cutting edge of this stuff. And so I love how much we've already gotten a teaser of your messaging. You talk about FaceTime, because you're right, everybody understands FaceTime. Every older person is FaceTiming with their grandkids. It's a concept that they're very familiar with. I saw my niece and nephew around Christmas time. They're 7-year-old twins. They were FaceTiming with an AI Santa. And I was like, that's so cool, because it's a technology that we all inherently understand. But when it comes to market adoption, you obviously have your messaging dialed in, but is it push or pull? Are you seeing that there's a wave of the market that is searching proactively for AI companionship? Or is this something that you recognize, hey, we have to go out there into the marketplace. We have to talk to senior care facilities. We have to talk to caregivers, and we have to get the word out. How are you balancing that from a business perspective?
That is absolutely true. Because of the early stage of what AI is, especially when it comes to companionship. When we did our initial customer, discovery, we had to really decide, okay, is there a market? We know there's a need. We know that there's a pain point there for people, and so, but what we're going to build, is that going to fill that pain point in a way that helps them? And when you don't have, as you know, when you don't have a company that's gone before you, it's one of those kind of things where you can always reinvent something that's already been done. That's easy sometimes, because that the market's already there. It's been validated. But when we did this, there is no market, and so we had to spend a lot of time discussing, okay, what does this look like? Especially when it comes to, like, say, dementia. We worked with the Dementia Institute here in Grand Rapids, because AI is great with patterns, right? But it's not so great with nuance still, even though it's getting much, much better. And our technologies help solve some of those things. But, when you talk about dementia, you don't know, they don't necessarily give normal responses. And so how do we do that? How do we keep that, keep those appropriate responses back when it's something that we really can't plan for necessarily? And so we had to make our AI, our learning model, very adaptable for that reason. But we had to go out and we had to decide, okay, are we willing to create this market? Because there was one competitor we had, which was more of a hardware-based, sit on your counter, kind of like little robot type Alexa thing, which did give you some conversation and stuff like that, which was great. But we were trying to do like realistic connection, right? You can't, even as much as you might like your Alexa, there's no realistic part of that. And so it's hard to get connected with Alexa. And when you put a face on a LLM, you can really feel. I wanted people. I told my developers when we started, I want people to forget that it's not real. And I've had plenty of people tell me that. But like you said, it was interesting being this is the first time I ever was kind of first into a niche. And so coming through that and deciding how many more things you have to decide, from little teeny things in the app to how you're going to approach customers, facilities, and things like that, and show them the benefit of something that they didn't even know could or does exist, was definitely a different challenge than sometimes you have when you're starting a marketing company or an education company like I've done before, where there is kind of a little bit of a roadmap. There was no roadmap for this. We had to make the road as we went.
Yeah, I love that, especially because this is a part of the conversation, Dan, that I've been so excited to go into with you, because I'm a big believer that all the things, we're obviously the sum of all of our experiences. And a lot of people always hope that their first business is going to be the one. You and I have both been at this for a long time now with multiple businesses under both of our belts. And I remember so many times along the way when I could kind of see the end is near with one of my businesses, I was thinking, gosh, I was convinced that this was going to be the one. This was going to be the one that took off and really built my legacy. And of course, what I realized is that they're all stepping stones onto bigger and better and more meaningful and impactful things. When I think about your journey up to this point, obviously you've gone through deep, extensive leadership training and consulting and communication, and you talk about your marketing agency. Where my head goes, Dan, is I'm just like, you are meant to do every single one of those things. You are meant to do EverFriends at this unique time because you've done all of the other things leading up to this. And you mentioned in your very first answer here in today's conversation, you talked about maturity, and it's a term that I use a lot. I'm 17 years into my entrepreneurial journey, and every time I talk about entrepreneurial maturity, I hope that people don't think about my age. I hope they realize that I'm talking about my entrepreneurial experiences, all the wins and, my goodness, all the losses along the way. And so, Dan, I'd love for you to speak to listeners about that, those stepping stones, those blocks, because 5 years ago, probably a few years ago, you could have probably never imagined that this is what you'd be doing. Talk to us about that natural evolution.
Sure. Yeah, I am a big believer in the stepping stones, as you would put it. Like I've taught for years when I taught leadership to either companies and or to youth, that the important part of life when you go through these steps is who you become because of these steps, right? Now, success is great, and making the money is great, but the most important part is, who are you becoming? Because if you don't take those lessons from the early and the middle, and you don't use them to benefit and grow, then you don't become the person that you need to be to do some of these things that you may have the opportunity to do. One of my sayings has always been, we prepare today for the opportunities of tomorrow. And you're exactly right. All of those things that I've done, and I've had my fair share of successes, and I've had my fair share of failures as well, just by building things wrong, not trusting people, not leading properly. I mean, before I did a lot of the leadership training, I was not a good leader at all. I was a control freak, and I wanted everything done. I wanted everything to pass under my eyeballs before it happened. And then I learned that you're robbing your people, because they're probably more qualified and talented than you're giving them credit for. And if you don't give them an opportunity, then you'll never know. And B, as much as an entrepreneur likes to think they know everything, they don't. And everybody has some value they can bring to this process. And so that is one of the lessons I learned early on. Okay, if you're going to build something that is going to be sustainable and you don't want to be tied to it all the time, you have to learn some of these skills. Amongst the other things that, as most entrepreneurs would know, right, it is the persistence, right? There are days when you sit on the couch or you sit in your office chair and you think, I'm crazy. This is never going to work. Like, what am I doing here? And then you have to be able to learn to shake that off, but you're not born with that. You're not born with that kind of thing. You have to learn to not, listen, we get up and we fight again tomorrow. And if you have a good mission, if you have a why behind what you do, it makes it a lot easier. But part of that is just building those muscles, right? Decision-making muscles that keep you persistent, muscles that help you to develop others around you, so that all the ideas that that you have and other people have make the best possible product. And that's the journey of where I came from. My first company, like I said, I had no idea how to lead those people. We did okay, but I burned out because I had no idea and no trust and no way to develop the people around me who were talented, but I never gave them a chance, And so as I've gone through life and as I've learned more things, I've adjusted those things. I've become the person, like you said, that could do something like this when the opportunity arose, and make sure that it has a much better chance of success, because becoming the person that needs to be the leader of something like this. And so now, with my team, I've been so fortunate to have such a great team, people that are far smarter than me. I believe that is one of the things you learn as you go up through the entrepreneur journey too, is hire the people that are smarter than you. Because, we a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we have great ideas. That's what makes us great, is our vision, right? But the little things, or the steps in between, there's people that are better at it a lot of the times, and that's what I've learned. And if the goal is to bring the best quality product, the most impactful product, then sometimes you have to step back a little bit and realize that maybe in this section or this section or this section, you don't have the best idea. And all of that comes from learning through those steps over time, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah, so well said, Dan. This is such a fun conversation for me, because not only are you doing this meaningful and impactful work and really revolutionizing an entire industry, which when I say industry, it actually touches on humanity and society at large. And that's what I think is so important about your work. But I also love the fact that you're an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. You bring that entrepreneurial thinking and that attitude and that energy and that resilience that you talked about to all of these things, which I think that it's that combination. I'm obviously biased. I very firmly believe that entrepreneurs change the world, and I think that you're such a shining example of that in action. So you've dropped a lot of entrepreneurial nuggets of knowledge on us today, but the question that I always love to ask at the end of these episodes is, what's your one best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, and just some of the things that you've touched on here today, not only about your own business, not only about your own experience, but you're actively thinking about these things every single day. You are a fellow entrepreneur still to this day. So what's that one piece of advice that you want to leave our listeners with today?
If I could give one piece of advice, it would be, once you decide, see it through, right? It's amazing in life how many times we think we're at the end. And if you have a good idea and you've thought it through, just persist, right? The world needs people that will fight for their dream, right? And you're absolutely right. I agree with you. It is entrepreneurs. It is the people willing to take the risks and push past what most people are willing to do that actually do change the world, right? It's I tell the youth a lot of times, it's the weirdos, right? It's the ones that will take the extra risk and that will just make that nobody thinks that, oh, that's not going to ever happen. I mean, we've seen it over and over and over in life. So if you have an idea, if you have a dream in your heart and you have done the research, push through until you see the result. It'll happen. It'll happen for you.
Yes, we don't get to choose the timeline, Dan, but we certainly can choose how much we persist and how much we stick to our mission. And that why is such a guiding light for all of us. And it's so evident here in today's conversation. Even thinking back, circling back to the very top of this conversation, Dan, it started with your family. It started with your mom. It started with you deeply caring about something. And here you are, having launched something into the world. I really want to stress this to listeners, is that this is not a hypothetical business. This is not a theoretical business. We hear all of these things coming down the pipeline, all the possibilities with AI in the future, but EverFriends is in the world. Your website, I think, is so incredibly done. Dan, whoever on your team was part of that process, kudos to every single person involved, because the way you've laid out the features, the way you've laid out how and why it benefits all the different stakeholders and people who care along the way, all the different ways that it can be used. Huge kudos to you. I love that it's reality. With that in mind, I also know that listeners are going to be keen to check it out in the real world. So drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Well, you can go to EverFriends.ai, the website that will give you some information. Right now, we also on the App Store and on Google Play Store, You can download EverFriends, even if you're just curious, and there's a 7-day free trial for it. I love feedback. So my email, and most people wouldn't do this, but I'm going to, Dan@EverFriends.ai. If you get on there and you love it, or you think there's something that needs to be changed, get on there, write it down, and send me an email. We are trying our best. We are a mission-based company. We are trying our best to put the best possible product out there. I have very thick skin, and I love to hear feedback. And so you can get the download there. You can get more information at the website. You can also find me at LinkedIn as Daniel Hungerford if you're interested in that kind of thing. I love chatting with people about this. We're getting ready to launch another app for autism for children as well. And so if that's something that interests you, reach out to me as we start getting ready to test that. I love hearing from people, and I love hearing people's stories. And so, yes, please reach out to me.
Yes, listeners, as someone who's had the great pleasure of interacting with Dan here today, I wish you could all join in on this, but as the podcast host, I really embrace this role, and I'm super appreciative of it. Dan loves this stuff. You've heard him here on the air, so take him up on that offer. That's why we're dropping all of those links down below in the show notes. No matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode, you'll find a direct link to EverFriends.ai. From there, it's really cool. You can just click an easy button, whether you're on an Apple device or a Droid device. You can just click right on through to the App Stores and download the app from there. We're also linking to Dan's personal LinkedIn. He dropped his personal email address. As someone who's emailed back and forth with him, that really is his direct email address. So don't be shy about reaching out. This is someone who is in the game and making a huge difference. Even just this teaser at the end, Dan, hearing about how your mind is already saying there's way more problems to solve societally, and we're just going to keep on tackling them. So listeners, definitely reach out to Dan on any platform that makes sense for you. Otherwise, Dan, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
It's been great being with you. I really appreciate it. Thank you.